My guest this morning is not a stranger to the reading circle because he was on with me a few years ago. We met and we stayed in contact with each other through social media. And then I had the honor, the privilege, and I was humbled to have the opportunity to appear on his show, a show that he co-hosts on the Transformation Radio Network. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But he co-hosts a show with Dr. Pat Basile, and a couple weeks ago on October 14th, my daughter's birthday, I had the opportunity to appear on their show, and I had an absolute blast. So I'm going to go ahead and get Marc introduced. Marc Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer, is the author of the spiritual bestsellers Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. Marc's credentials are unparalleled in the paranormal world. He's world-renowned fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is also an Oxford-educated trial lawyer who has tried hundreds of cases. He is licensed to practice law in Florida, in the District of Columbia, and before the United States Supreme Court. All right now. As the psychic explorer, Marc travels the world examining supernatural phenomena or spiritual and mystical destinations. He is an expert in spirit communication, survival of consciousness, near-death experiences, ancient mysteries, and the paranormal. He has an extensive background in quantum physics, history, archaeology, philosophy, and theology. Plus, he's got a great sense of humor. That he does. When the legal system and the paranormal collide, Marc is the media's, quote, go-to guide, unquote, as a nationally recognized paranormal expert and legal analyst. He's commented on a wide range of legal paranormal topics such as solving cold cases, the use of DNA to identify Jack the Ripper, alleged demonic possession as a defense to murder, and how a haunted reputation in real estate affects property values. Marc is regularly featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox affiliates, Gaia TV, The Shift Network, and major talk radio shows including Coast to Coast AM and Darkness Radio, as well as in print media worldwide. Because of his credibility and accuracy as a psychic medium, Marc is featured by Gary E. Schwartz of the University of Arizona in his book, Human Interaction with the Divine, the Sacred, and the Deceased, Psychological, Scientific, and Theological Perspectives. This is what I was talking about. I appeared on their show a couple weeks ago. Marc is the co-host of the internet TV show, The Psychic and the Doc, on the Transformation Network, and is a regular columnist for Best Holistic Life magazine. He is a headline speaker at conventions, expos, and spiritual organizations such as IANS, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Edgar Cayce's ARE, Afterlife Research Education Institute, Vail Symposium, Sedona Spirit Symposium, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and universities including Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. You can visit Marc online at www.afterlifefrequency.com. If you go to my Facebook page, the website is there, but again, it is www.afterlifefrequency.com. Marc, welcome to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. Marc, what I was saying prior to you coming on is this interview, for a lot of people, there are a lot of skeptics out there who don't think that what we're going to be talking about this morning is real. And in some ways, and maybe this is synchronistic, the fact that this happened this morning, because it could act for confirmation in terms of, yes, it is real, because Dr. Evan Alexander also is a paranormal or works in the paranormal. And I had the exact same experience with him some years ago in terms of having him on the phone and us getting a whole lot of interference or either the call not coming through at all. And now I had the exact same experience again with you, who also works in that field. So first off, good morning again.
Good morning. And thank you for having me on the Reading Circle. It's an honor, and it's just good being able to talk to you again, Marc.
No, saying, and we talked a couple of weeks ago whenever I was on yours and Dr. Pat's show and had an absolute blast. Thank you so much for inviting me. When I scheduled you on on October 30th today, it just did not dawn on me that it was Halloween weekend. So again, in terms of when we start talking about the spiritual, a lot of people, they connect or either they associate Halloween with spirits and so forth and so on. So it didn't even dawn on me that when we scheduled October 30th, that it was Halloween weekend. So again, it's all kind of fitting together. And the fact that we were able to have kind of like that little example, I'll use what happened this morning kind of like as a little experiment to show folks, yeah, this stuff is real. And so the latest book that Marc has written is called, interestingly enough, The Afterlife Frequency. We were having frequency issues just now. The scientific proof of spiritual contact and how that awareness will change in your life. I had you on a few years ago with one of your other books, and this is the latest book. But let's bring the listening audience up to speed in terms of, I know as I read through the book, it says that I heard you say earlier, like third or fourth generation.
Yes.
Third or fourth generation what? When we start talking mediums and psychics and folks who can do readings and contact the afterlife, kind of help the listening audience understand what that's all about.
Well, this is an ability that runs in my family for generations, and I've tracked it back four generations into the 1890s on both sides, both my mother's and father's sides of the family, that we have the ability to perceive spirits. And there's people in my family that pick up on future events, a lot of premonitions. And, people say, but, my dad was a Navy SEAL and a NASA engineer. So he was a real no-nonsense guy. My mother was a commercial illustrator and an artist. And so we were, for all intents and purposes, the all-American family next door. So I'm the first person in the family to have gone public with these abilities. And so what this means is that we have a heightened sensitivity to what I have termed the afterlife frequency, which means that we can tune into the presence of spirits. And the thing is, Mark, people call it paranormal or supernatural. It is actually a normal part of human nature. It's just that some people are more sensitive to it than others. And you know what? Everybody has these experiences. It's just stronger with some people than it is with others.
So as I get into the book, the first part of the book, right off the bat in the introduction, you're talking about RAFT, recognize, accept, feel, and trust. So since that's at the beginning in the introduction, let's talk a little bit about that because again, they're going to be and I know you've run up against this. They're going to be skeptics out there and saying
every day.
So
yeah, and I don't worry about that, because I know this is real. And to quote the great astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, the beauty of science is that you don't have to believe it for it to be true. Because there's a lot of things that we take for granted every day that 100 years ago would have been seen as science fiction or pseudoscience. I mean, Mark, in the 1920s, Nikola Tesla, who was way ahead of his time, was being interviewed a couple years before he died. And he said that with advances in what he called telephony and television, because those were basic concepts, very rudimentary ideas at the time, he said eventually the whole world will be a universal mind, will not only be able to talk to each other, but even see each other on a device small enough to carry in a man's breast pocket. Now, he was talking about a cell phone. And so
right.
In 1920, the idea of a cell phone would have been complete science fiction, or what people now call pseudoscience. And now it's a fact of everyday life. I mean, before the show, we were talking on one. So this is something that is simply a fact of life. The raft technique is one of the things that I teach people in the book, because everybody is capable of having a spirit contact. Mark, if I told you right now that you and everybody listening to this show, and everybody on planet Earth, for that matter, is surrounded by invisible energy filled with information that they could tap into, a lot of people start scoffing, and then my response is, well, why don't you turn on your radio? Because you're surrounded by radio waves. And the idea of radio waves in the year 1850 was purely a scientific theory But by 1900, there were transmissions from Europe to the United States. They called it wireless back then. So the truth is that our technology is simply evolving to where we're getting to be able to detect and pick up on these electromagnetic anomalies, which eventually is going to prove the existence of spirits. I mean, I know they exist, and the people that work in this field. So the RAF technique teaches people how to recognize, accept, feel, and trust the signs from spirits. And if you'll indulge me just for a minute, the way I discovered this is I was working on my new book, The Afterlife Frequency, and I kept hitting a brick wall. I hit that dreaded writer's block. And since I'm on the reading circle, everybody who's an author, yourself included, we all have experienced writer's block.
Correct.
And it doesn't it always happen on the day that you actually schedule to work on your book? It's whenever I don't have time, like I have an appointment or something coming up, all of a sudden in the 10 minutes before that I start getting all my bright ideas, So here I am. I had the morning scheduled off, nothing, nada, zip, zero. So I thought, okay, instead of forcing myself, I'm going to go for a walk. And I live near the ocean, so I'm in East Coast, Central Florida, and I'm on the Barrier Islands, so I figured, all right, let me go for a walk on the beach. So heading down my driveway, and all of a sudden I get these chills and tingles. I'm like, okay, that's electromagnetic activity. And Mark, I'm compelled to do an about face. So instead of heading toward the beach, I head in the opposite direction and decide to walk down this bike path. All right, and it's about 11 in the morning, and there I see two objects shining in the sun. So I walk up to them, and I see it's a penny and a nickel. And I go to bend over, and now both my parents have passed, but also I hear I hear my mother's voice. She was a medium, my dad was a medium. I hear my mother's voice in my head. If their head's down, don't touch it, it's bad luck. And I start laughing, Mark, because my mom's family was of Italian descent, okay? And the joke we always had is we have a superstition for all occasions. You don't pick up a penny if its head's down. Watch out for a black cat. Don't walk under a ladder, all those type of things. And I'm laughing, and then I hear my dad's voice, and he says, it's money, grab it. So now I'm really cracking up, and I'm standing there, and I'm holding this penny and this nickel in the palm of my hand. They're shining in the sun, and all of a sudden I go, oh, 6 cents. 6 cents. It hits me. And then immediately in my mind's eye, I see an image of my father standing in the ocean holding this blue canvas raft that he used to have. And I'm going, okay, Dad was a Navy SEAL. He was a scuba diver and a swimming instructor. He probably taught throughout his life 1,000 kids to swim at the Y and other organizations. And then it dawned on me, raft. They're teaching me to recognize the signs from spirits, accept the contact as real, feel it without fear, and trust the message. I'm like, that's it. And so I ran back to my computer, writer's block gone, and the words just flew out on my fingers. I got like 10 paragraphs. And I mean, it was just one of those marathon writing spurts. And I realized that this is a very important thing for everybody to learn how to do. Not just for, let's say you have a dream, okay? And everybody has dreams, I believe, where a deceased loved one will come and talk to them. And it's different than a regular dream because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's coherent. Or you catch a glimpse of a loved one out of your peripheral vision. Or maybe you go to a medium like myself and information comes through. But what about if you have a near-death experience or a deathbed vision where a loved one is in the process of dying and family and close friends and even hospice and other healthcare workers start to see the spirits that are connected with that person? This is a very widely reported phenomenon that we're notating in the afterlife and survival of consciousness arena. So it was clear to me that the raft technique, and this is what I teach people, and I give some exercises, how to increase your awareness to help you recognize when signs from spirits appear, how to accept that as real. It's the feel part where people get hung up. That's where the skepticism, oh, it's a coincidence, oh, it's a grief-induced hallucination, oh, I just want it to be that, and you overthink it, and that's where it fizzles out. So once you go from recognizing, accepting, feeling without overthinking, feeling without fear, then you'll be able to trust the message. and that's the RAP technique.
Now, you were saying earlier you have a heightened sensitivity. You said everyone has the ability, but your sensitivity as a part of your gift, it's heightened. And so I've always been, that was one of the reasons I invited you on the show a few years ago. This area I've always been fascinated by, particularly the afterlife. And I've seen here on page 7, chapter 1, first page in the book, in chapter 1, one of the greatest mysteries is what happens when we die. Do we cease to exist, or does our existence continue on beyond the material world? And what I just heard you say was you actually felt as you were walking on the beach, your mom and dad speaking with you. How does that now line up? In many instances, a lot of times we say, listen to your first voice. Is by chance sometime that first voice that's speaking to us, something that's going on the other side? Also, I noticed the title of the chapter was Spiritual Synchronicity, because I'm convinced what happened just now with us trying to connect is all connected to the topic, as well as this weekend being with Halloween. On yesterday in the school, I have, on Friday mornings, I have what they call a morning meeting with the entire school body. So, and my school is in a church, by the way. The school is housed in a former church. So the multi-purpose room is the sanctuary. So as I walk into the sanctuary, the boys are screaming and carrying on. I mean, I walk up the stairs and I hear all this yelling, and I'm wondering what is going on in there. As I walk in the room, I see not a fake spider, because I know it's Halloween weekend. It was not a fake spider. It was a genuine, real spider that was coming down out of the ceiling on his web and just kind of making his way down. And the boys were having a fit. But I looked at that and said, okay, this wasn't a prank. This was a bona fide real spider that just happened to be coming down while we were in that sanctuary all together. So again, I attribute it to the fact, okay, it's Halloween weekend. There is, my point in sharing the stories, there is something beyond us that drives all these various events.
Well, it's interesting. Your school is in a church. I mean, what do people of faith, what have the great spiritual teachers always told us is that the soul, who and what we are, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and then moves on after the body dies. Think of your body like a car. We're not the car. We're in the car. When the car stops functioning, we get out and move on. We know from the laws of physics that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. We know from the study of neuroscience that the brain has an electrical field. The entire body does, but there's two of the two most powerful electrical fields in the body are the heart, because that's a pump running 24/7 and it needs lots of energy. But the most sophisticated energetic system in the body is the electromagnetic field within the brain. And so in this book, I introduce new terminology to bring our understanding of spirit communication out of the Victorian era into 21st century. And that's why I've introduced the term the electromagnetic soul to describe what we really are, which is pure consciousness, which is the soul, that is eternal electromagnetic energy. And that being said, Mark, because we have an EM field in our head, and I'm not negating or denigrating faith or belief, there is an explanation for everything. And that's why we can communicate with the other side, because the frequency of our EMS, our electromagnetic soul, increases to a higher level. Spirits bring theirs down to a slower vibration. You get a frequency match. It's just like tuning into this radio station. You have to find the right station. So you either increase or decrease your frequency, and there you have the frequency match. And that's why a lot of times, especially when you get people like Dr. Eben Alexander, who had a near-death experience. I also had an NDE, but I'm also a medium, and you get a bunch of us together, and it's not unusual to start seeing electrical anomalies. It isn't anything spooky or scary. It's just simply different electromagnetic fields interfacing with each other, and sometimes it'll cause static or even power outages. It's funny, not. At the International Association of Near-Death Studies. I've been a keynote speaker there a number of times, and it's a fascinating organization for the past 50 years, using the scientific method to study these anomalies known as near-death experiences. The people running the technical on the live stream and all the AV are always complaining, God, every time we work here, everything goes haywire.
Right.
So we all got a little taste of that this morning. And sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I can't do it on purpose. It's just it's just part of the package. But it's all about energy transfer and frequency. And the reason I wrote this book is because it's not like books written by other mediums. This is a work of serious scientific approach, but it reads like a juicy novel because I want people to be entertained, and that's why I use the stories to illustrate the concepts. And Mark, what I've found is that traditionally, near-death experience, a shared death experience, a deathbed vision, an out-of-body experience, contact through a medium, a visitation such as in a dream or a sensation, of a spirit being around you, have all been treated as separate phenomenon. And I've been studying this for a long time, and they're not separate phenomenon. They all have common denominators, and they're all based on the same scientific principles, which can be explained through quantum physics. It's all about energy transfer and frequency alignment. And so that's where the raft technique ties in, spiritual synchronicity, collective consciousness, communication, and the other concepts that I've developed for this book to make it understandable for anybody that there is a reason for everything, and that reason ultimately results in an explanation through an understanding of quantum physics.
And that's where, in terms of, I guess, for the layperson, I guess that's where we kind of get lost in the sauce, as you will. However, the fact, like I said, I find this area fascinating. And so that's why I was like, oh, this interview has to go on because I want to have this conversation. But in terms of the couple of things, I noticed as I was reading your biography that we had theology in there.
Yes.
Do you ever run into a situation where folks say what you're doing is actually going against what the Bible says? Whenever the Bible is talking about, don't consult mediums and sorcerers and this, that, and the other.
Well, I'm glad that you asked that because, see, there's a lot of people that take a salad bar approach to their belief systems. And that what I mean is they get to pick and choose what verses to justify their own agendas. And in Leviticus 19, it says, do not practice divination or seek omens. In Deuteronomy 18, verses 10 through 11, it says, don't consult with mediums. However, if you continue reading in Deuteronomy 18 and go to passages 21 through 22, it says, how do we know a word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name, and prophet is what is meant by a medium or psychic in the Bible. See, when we're good guys, they call us prophets. When we're bad, they call us, mediums. Okay, so I'm serious. So when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word which the Lord has not spoken. In other words, if what the prophet, the medium, brings through is true or comes true, then it is spoken through the Lord. In other words, it's from the divine. So the truth is the standard. Then, if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 through 12, there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. In other words, to each individual, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. To one is given prophecy, to another discernment of spirits, but one and the same Spirit produces all of these, distributing them individually to each person as he wishes. In other words, prophecy is foretelling future events, discernment of spirits. That's what I do as a medium. Then the Apostle Paul writes in Romans 12, verse 6, we all have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophecy in accordance with your faith. So it depends where you look in Scripture. There are many verses throughout the Old and the New Testament which put spirit communication in a favorable light. I mean, think about the Magi, the three wise men. Okay, they go to see Herod. Herod, wants to eliminate this potential rival to his throne, meaning
Correct.
Jesus. Okay, who's a descendant of the house of David, and the wise men are told in a dream that Herod is basically off his rocker and don't reveal the location of Jesus. Meanwhile, Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus, an angel, a spirit, if you will, comes to him in a dream and says, take Jesus and Mary to safety in the land of Egypt. And then a few years later, after Herod dies, another spirit, another angel, communicates with Joseph in a dream saying, the people who wanted the child are dead, it's now safe to return to Judea. So we see several examples throughout Scripture where spiritual entities contact people, and it's A-okay. And here's where things went sour for us. It was with King Saul. Okay, Saul's having a rough day, rough time. David's popularity is on the rise. The Philistines are on the march. His most trusted advisor, Samuel, dies. So he consults the witch of Endor. And the witch of Endor facilitates communication with the prophets, the spirit of the prophet Samuel, who says, essentially, Saul, your game is up, okay? And so what happens after that, Saul's defeated in battle, his sons are slain, and then Saul takes his own life. And so the rabbinical community said, see what happens when you talk to those people? But the truth is, who became the king of the Jews was David. And was it not the will of God for David to ascend the throne of Judea? And as it states, through biblical passages, that Jesus is affiliated with the house of David. Pretty big synchronicity there.
All right, absolutely.
Several centuries. So, I've been studying this. Other biblical scholars have been studying this. It's fascinating when you start looking at how widespread spirit communication is. But what's happened is, particularly when the Romans got hold of Christianity, and they turned it into, okay, now it's an extension of imperial authority, and you can only get God through us, through our clerics. And by the way, you got to tithe this. And if you don't listen to us, you go to hell.
Right. So, from what I'm hearing, just based on what you were just saying, spirit and angels have been with us the entire time, whether you look in Bible or whatever, because the examples you just gave, there's many passages in there where the angel of the Lord came, an angel came, or a dream, or what have you. I'm looking here at spiritual situational awareness. I skipped over to chapter 5. It says, each experience endured has a cause and a reason for its occurrence. Good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, not because of a simple stimulus reaction course of events, but because of the complex chain of intertwining energy and events in the material world. Talk a little bit about that.
It is so difficult for someone who's lost a child. And the last thing you want to say is, oh, well, it's all part of, a bigger plan. No parent ever wants to hear that, nor should they have to hear that. It's like when I was at the bedside of my father, the greatest guy I ever knew, dying slowly of cancer. And it was just, and everyone who's been in that situation knows how horrible that is. But we have to realize that our time here in this material world isn't even a heartbeat of the bigger picture of what our existence as an eternal soul is, and that everyone matters, everyone counts, every life has impact. And even the negative things, let's say a child dies, absolutely horrifying. And I'm not taking away from that at all. And there's nothing we can do about the fact a loved one has died. But what we can do is change how we react to it. I do a lot of work with Helping Parents Heal. It's an organization created by parents who've lost children, for parents who've lost children, to help them get through this. And that was created in response to the death of the founder's children. All right? So they're still grieving. It's still a horrible thing what's happened to them, but they, because of that, they were motivated to create an organization to people who felt so completely isolated that nobody could possibly understand them. Does it cure their grief? No, but does it help them recover and continue on their journey? It does. So we have to realize that even the horrible things that happen are all a piece of a much larger puzzle. And, every day that we're alive, Mark, is a gift. But many days, and I stress many days, it does not feel that way.
Absolutely. I could not agree with the last couple of comments more. And it's interesting, as I was sitting here listening to you, my sister and I were having a conversation day before yesterday. Day before yesterday. And the words that you just said about puzzle is the exact analogy she used, because we were talking about some things that we're going through that we just can't see God. And what she said was, well, it's almost like God is the puzzle, the one putting the puzzle together, and he knows where the pieces are and we can't see it. And now I just heard you just say it's a part of a larger puzzle. See, these are all things for me. And I tell you what, while I'm there, and we're going to continue on because I know we lost some time with the technical difficulty, so I'm going to go beyond 8 o'clock. This I know. So there's a couple other things I want to get at for sure before we leave. But let's talk a little bit about what is synchronicity.
Synchronicity is, it seems like everything falls into place for a reason. It'd be a lot easier for me to give a story about synchronicity than it would to describe the technical explanation. And this story is not in the book. This story is not in the book on purpose because I wanted to use this when I was explaining concepts in the book, like spiritual synchronicity. Mark, the best friend I ever had, Billy, grew up with him. Okay, we would have been problematic in your class, I think, but I also think that we both would have really liked you and admired you. Okay, but we were 11 years old, went to junior high, high school, and college together, and then after college, I went to law school, and he went to Asia, learned to speak Japanese, Cantonese, Thai, Indonesian. He had a gift for languages. And, in fact, the first chapter in the Afterlife Frequency is one of our adventures, very harrowing. And let me tell you, if the synchronicity had gone in a different direction, I can guarantee I would not be here speaking to you. I don't even think I'd be alive right now. And it was one of our adventures in Bangkok, Thailand. But because I spent some time with him traveling through Asia. And so we had this ongoing debate. He was an atheist, didn't believe in God, didn't believe in an afterlife. Of course, I argued, quote-unquote, the other side, pun intended, okay? And but he'd say, I don't believe in an afterlife because there's no technology that can prove this. There's no devices that can detect it. He goes, but you freaked me out with the psychic thing. And he said, I don't know how you do that, and you give me something to think about. So we had this ongoing debate, Mark, that started in high school. And one of the greatest honors of my life was when I performed the wedding ceremony for he and his wife. I was a notary public, and it was one of the happiest days in my life. I'm standing there performing the wedding for my best friend. My parents were there. They were alive. His parents were there. All of our friends from college and high school. It was just one of those shining moments. And sadly, like 3 years after that, he succumbed to suicide. And and let me tell you, he was my brother for all intents and purposes, and I was just crushed. And so a year after that, I was on tour for my first book, Never Letting Go, and I had just spoken at a paranormal convention. Let's talk about technical difficulties there at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. And I'd just done my bit, and so I'm at my table, I'm signing books, and there's all these paranormal investigators, all these people from TV shows and all that. So my manager, Rocky, she's walking around on the floor looking at stuff, and she was walking by this display of the Spirit Box scanner. And the guy running it, his name is Chris, he's a real well-known paranormal investigator. She's walking by, and she hears, "Get Mark." She stops and she looks at this thing, and she looks at Chris, and they're looking at each other, and they hear, "Get Mark." He goes, "Oh, my God." He goes, "Do you think he means you're Mark Anthony?" So all of a sudden I hear, "Mark, get over here. And I'm looking up, and they're like waving at me. So I'm thinking something wrong is happening, and there's people crowding around the table, and I run up there. And as soon as I got there, before I could say anything, I hear, "Dude, Mark," I stopped, and I'm like, and I look at Rocky. She goes, "Mark, I know that voice." And it says, "Love you, bro," and then static filled the speaker. And Rocky goes, "That was Billy." And I go, "My God, that was Billy." See, growing up East Coast, Central Florida, surfers, he always called me dude and bro. One of the last things he ever said to me, he hugged me at the Bangkok International Airport. I was getting ready to come back to the States. He was headed to Singapore. He goes, love you, bro. And, like, his voice came out of this machine. And the investigators, like, this is highly unusual. Not only did it call for you by name, but both of you positively identified the voice. So at first I'm thinking, okay, this was I'm a medium and I'm usually the one that's doing these type of connections for people, but this was different. And then, Mark, I started reflecting on it. It's one of the concepts I call the unfolding, because it takes time, for a message to unfold and make sense. And then it dawned on me, after the initial shock of, my God, that was his voice, then I realized, what did he always say to me? There's no technology, there's no science, there's no machines or devices that can prove this. And yet the atheist, the electromagnetic soul of the atheist, spoke to me through an electronic device.
Wow.
And that got the wheels in my head turning, and that is one of the main reasons I decided to write the Afterlife Frequency, to explain in scientific terms how this happens, why this happens, and even where this happens.
So, listening audience, I hope you've been with me since 6, but certainly since 7, and certainly if not 7:15 when we were able to really kick off. But my guest this morning is Marc Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer. The last time he was on, I believe we were doing his book. It was one of the other two, or both. Never Letting Go.
Yeah, that was Evidence of Eternity.
Well, or either Evidence of Eternity, right.
Yeah.
So this is his third book that we're talking about today, but the three books go together of the topic of what we're talking about. And the question I just asked him was about synchronicity, and I'm sitting here blown away at that, which there's a couple other areas I want to hit, and one of them is this whole notion of the NDE, or the fact that you're, for the most part, for lack of a better word, proving that there's another side in spirits. Does that provide comfort for those who are afraid of death, who are afraid of this concept we call death? I would think this would provide some type of comfort. And for those of you who had the near-death experience, you definitely know. But for those of us who have not had one and who are fearful of the fact that one day we're going to be, we don't know where, everybody has different beliefs. Some think you know absolutely nothing, that you're just done and you're gone. Others have this whole afterlife belief. And so does this provide, like what you're doing, does that provide comfort or almost a liberty here on this side to know that it doesn't end here?
Near-death experience research has been conducted in earnest for the last 50 years, and they've been reported for thousands of years. The Apostle Paul writes in Corinthians, I know a man caught up in the third heaven. Whether it was in this world or the other world, I do not know, but God knows. And we've been analyzing this, meaning near-death experience researchers, for years. And we believe that this is an account of a near-death experience. Plato writes about the story of a warrior killed in battle in ancient Greece, and then they're about to burn his body on a funeral pyre, and he comes back to life and starts talking about going through a tunnel into the light and seeing his deceased loved ones. So nobody knew what to call these resurrections. They defied convention. Okay, medical experts had no idea what to call them. Religious leaders only could say it's a miracle. And so Dr. Raymond Moody started studying this at the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, continued that, and that's when IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies, was founded, and then later the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, founded by Dr. Jeffrey Long, a friend and colleague of mine. And we've been applying the scientific method to this, objective analytical analysis. They occur everywhere. It doesn't matter your age, race, creed, whether drugs were a factor. It doesn't matter socioeconomic status. The database, we get reports from Iran, from Korea, from all over Africa, South America, United States, Europe, you name it. The data is consistent. There's like 10 to 12 similarities. And the conclusion is that your consciousness, your electromagnetic soul, survives physical death. And it's so comforting because, I had an NDE when I was 4 years old, and I write about that in the chapter on near-death experiences. But we're also noticing that people, it's what's called a shared death experience, a shared crossing. Let's say somebody who's dying, and they are they're close to dying, and they start talking about and seeing spirits of their loved ones coming to them. Now, a lot of times this has been passed off as the side effect of a dying brain, grief,
right,
hallucination. But you know what, Mark? Now people are coming forward, and I've been at the bedside of a number of people who have been dying, and I've seen this firsthand. People who are not mediums, family members, friends, hospice workers, healthcare workers, they see the spirits too. When the person dies, they see a bright white light, the room like flashes or a surge of light come out of the body. They feel like they're lifted off their feet for a second. What's happening here? It's the energetic shift and the frequency alignment of that person's EMS as they're transferring to the afterlife frequency. And this has been noted all over the world. And then I give data, and I refute the skeptic's position on this as effect of a dying brain, and I don't want to go into that here because it would take too long. But I do refute that in the book, because a lot of people saying, oh, it's just a side effect of a dying brain.
Oh, you're right, and I've had some of folks that I work and labor with and serve in the same church. I've heard members say, like, when their sister passed, they were in the room whenever the sister was talking to another brother or sister who had passed away. I've heard those guys. I know my grandmother had one years ago, back in the 80s, and when they brought her back, she actually said, I wish you had not brought me back, because where I was so beautiful. And she was very clear on that, and that she was like, I wish you would have left me where I was, but she couldn't stay there. And interestingly enough, the last sibling of hers just passed this past week, and I was sharing with my aunt. I said, I will bet you all the rest of the siblings were welcoming him in. That they were all, I'll bet you, he was the last one out of 8 or 9 or 10 of them. All the rest of them were gone. He was the last one. He was 94 years old. He just passed away last week. And I told my aunt, I said, because it's actually my grandmother's brother. I said, I'll bet you all the rest of them were up there cheering him in, waving him on. And
absolutely. Yeah. Was he the one that used to sneak smoking?
Yes.
Yeah, well, he just said, I'm there. It's funny because your grandmother said he always thought he was getting away with smoking, but we knew better, and they're all laughing about that. So you see, what happened is you're focusing on him, you're thinking about him, and this is what I call a frequency beacon. You're emitting a wave of frequency because you love them, and they picked up on that. They're drawn to you, and they immediately gave me he's the one that used to sneak smoking. And he thought he got away with it, but he didn't.
Wow. And I had not had this conversation with Mark, listening audience. So he didn't even know I was going to share that part of the story, but I was just sharing it in terms of NDEs and the whole notion of folks seeing their loved ones. But while we're on that topic, in terms of reading, because what Mark just did was a mini reading just now. And I've been, years ago when we talked about his other book, he happened to be coming to New York, and I saw he was coming there, and I went to the bookstore. I think it was the Edgar Cayce. The Edgar Cayce in
New York City, yeah.
Yeah, it was there. I went there, and he was doing readings, and I'm reading in the book how, when folks go to readings, they go in there. We were talking skepticism earlier. They go into the reading like, this is not real. He's not going to be able to do it. It's not going to apply to me, so forth and so on. So then when Mark does the reading, and everybody, he says, is anybody in here, associated with such? No, not me. No, not me. And then he shares in the book, which I found was somewhat comical. They will call him back a month, 3 months, 2 years later, say, when you said this, that meant my... Talk a little bit about when you say real, like I said, you just did one, very quickly with me just now. So talk about, what goes on there with readings and kind of the scenarios that I just presented.
Well, once again, that would take a lot longer than what we got. But here's in the Cliff Notes version. Does anyone even use Cliff Notes anymore? Anyway, the abbreviated version. All right, so I remember they got me through college, but when you open up your brain to higher, when I open up my brain to higher frequencies, spirits align their frequency with mine, and they start transmitting information. I'll see things, hear things, feel things, and know things. And the skeptics, will say like, "Oh, you're just cold reading," but then things will come out that are so off the wall and so bizarre. I was doing a group event, and I zeroed in on this one woman, and it was her father's spirit that came through, and I started seeing the dwarf Grumpy. And I'm like, Grumpy? I'm seeing the dwarf Grumpy. And I've been doing this long enough to where I know, like, no matter how weird it is, you say it. And she goes, "Oh, my God," which is always a good response, And I said, "Okay, what's up with Grumpy?" She goes, "I collect Grumpies." I go, "What?" Somebody nice goes, "Is that even a thing?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "My whole life I've been collecting little Grumpy dolls. I just like the dwarf Grumpy." Okay, so what was happening here is her father's spirit was presenting a fact about her that certainly I can't look at somebody in a crowd and go, "I bet they collect Grumpies."
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's things like that, or one of the gifts from the divine, one of the gifts from the afterlife frequency from God is healing, and it was so funny because I was doing a session over the phone for this woman. And her mother's spirit started talking about the mother's, her grandson. And the client said, "Well, that's my nephew, because I don't have any children, but you're describing my nephew." I said, "I'm getting that he's got headaches and eye strain, and you've got to get him to the eye doctor." And she said, "Interesting. My sister said my nephew's been having headaches and complaining about it's hard to read." And I said, "Now I'm hearing the song from Little Richard, Tutti Frutti Ah Rudy," and I start humming it. I won't do that here because copyright issues or something. Plus I can't come close to how Little Richard would sing. And she goes, "Well, that's interesting, but Little Richard means absolutely nothing to me. I mean, I know who he is, but not a fan." A month later, Mark, I get an email. She said, "My sister made an appointment for my nephew at the eye doctor, and I went with her. And as soon as we walked into the doctor's office, on the radio, it started playing Tutti Frutti Ah Rudy by Little Richard." Now, I think we're way past 1,000,000 to 1 on a coincidence there. And so spirits can see what we consider to be the future. And the reason I talk about interconnectedness and quantum physics, let me make it real simple. And this is how I describe things in the book. We all know from science everything's made of molecules, which are made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons.
Correct.
And they, in turn, are made of the smallest particle, which is quantum. Technically, an electron is a quantum, okay, because it's 1/1800th the size of a proton, okay. And a quantum is pure electromagnetic energy. Everything is electromagnetic energy, and that's why on the quantum level there's no distinction between biology and physics. Okay, biology, the studying of living matter, physics, the study of energy and inorganic material. So that means, Mark, you and I are electromagnetic energy, but so are the radio waves that the show is being broadcast on. So are the grains of sand on the beach. So are the chairs we're sitting in. So is the light from the sun and the nuclear reactions in the sun. This is part of us understanding God. Always was, always will be connected. We're all interconnected. We're all part of this. Okay, it doesn't require complex calculations and all that. It requires the understanding of this. Quantum theorists believe that on the subatomic level, time as we know it doesn't exist. Like what's happening, what has happened, is happening, and will happen is occurring simultaneously, which is why a spirit being able to move at the speed of light, because everything in the EM spectrum does, the spirit comes through to me, says, "This little boy has eye problems, get into the eye doctor, and I'll verify this for you by giving you this song, which you will hear when you walk in at that precise moment." That's spiritual synchronicity, that's quantum physics, and that is how, or at least partially how, all this works.
Now, listening audience, now again, I personally think what we went through in the morning was confirmation. But again, Mark and I I'm telling you, as I sit here, Mark and I had absolutely no communication at all about my mom's or my grand uncle passing away. We had none. And yet, for that couple of seconds we were talking about it, Mark did that quick read about him smoking. So I have two other family members who are listening to the show, and I text them. I said, was he correct about Uncle Laddie with the smoking? And so the response back was, yes, laugh out loud.
Well,
so Mark, you were spot on.
And what's with your grandmother with the color purple? Did she love purple? Because, man, she has given me purple, purple, purple. And it's a beautiful, deep, rich purple color.
Really? Now,
yeah.
I got to think, because she passed in 1983, so I got to think back.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Go ahead and check with your family.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a good possibility, because I'm trying to think, when we buried her, did she have a purple scarf? I know she had on a white dress.
Here's another example. It's what I call the unfolding. It can take hours, days, weeks, even longer after a reading. So I was doing a reading for this lady, and her father's spirit came through, and he shows me a World War I biplane. And I'm doing the reading for her and her husband on the phone, okay? And I said, does that make sense? No. And I said to the husband, does that make sense?
Right.
And there's this pause. He goes, no. Okay, well, this is really strong. No. Well, I get an email from them a couple days later, and they said, she goes, my father was a pilot, and I forgot that his best friend had a World War I biplane that he used to fly to our ranch and take us for rides on, so I forgot about that. All right, and then her husband said, on our last anniversary, we went for a flight on a replica of a World War I biplane, but I didn't think I should mention that. Okay, now, I just don't fling out World War I fighter craft hoping to get a hit. How many people used to go with their dad for a ride in a World War I biplane, and how many people go on a flight on a replica of a World War I biplane? So this is all part of what I call the unfolding. It takes time to unfold. And sometimes people during a reading, they'll conceal information or they won't tell me things, or when I say tell me things, they won't confirm what I'm giving them because, I didn't think I should mention it. Well, if I mention World War I biplane, the answer should be yes, not an obfuscation, because by doing that, you're creating an energetic block. In other words, it's like you're throwing rocks at the spirits going, get out of here, And if you want the information, then, if I bring up World War I biplane and you just went for a flight and won, say yes.
See, this is okay. The skepticism comes in because folks will come in there and think, "Oh, well, you just threw that out. That can apply to anybody," and that's what Mark is trying to say. No, it doesn't apply. It's very specific. Now, he specifically went after my uncle about his smoking. I had not told him anything about, and his name was Lattimore, by the way. We call him Uncle Laddie. His name was Lattimore. He was, the last surviving of the bunch, Lattimore. And so Uncle Laddie just passed last week. I had told Mark nothing about smoking, this, that, and the other, and yet that's what came through. And then when I checked with my cousin and my aunt, they both was like, yes, laugh out loud. So they're getting a kick out of this as well. But the point of the matter is, the ability is there. We scoff at it. Like he said, you come into the reading saying, oh, this is not going to work. This is a bunch of hooey. Then as it turns out, when he does give something, then as you just said, you block it. You put an obstacle in there. I'm absolutely fascinated by the fact that you can communicate with folks. I mean, for me, that gives me hope in terms of knowing that this is not the end. There's more to life than just here. And Mark, I always tease and say my goal is to live 100 and to be 100 and healthy. I don't know what God's plans are, but my plan is to be here 100 and healthy. And I'm sharing that to say that even if I were to get that goal, it's not even even 100 years here on Earth is not on the radar screen of eternity.
No, it isn't. And that the lesson, one of the lessons that I've learned from communicating with the other side is make each day count. All right. We're all here for a limited period of time. And each day should count. And that counting should be through acts of peace, love, and understanding.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to the RAFT technique, RAFT, recognize, accept, feel, and trust the messages from spirits. Let's focus on the T. Trust. How do you know that the messages from the afterlife frequency, from the divine, from, the positive. Well, there's a lot of insanity going on in our world right now. Always has been, but the Internet increases our awareness of it. People say, I'm a shaman, let's do an insurrection. Okay, I'm a religious leader, let's make people wear bomb vests and blow up people, and they say that, this is sanctioned by their version of God or their version of spirit communication. Those are not messages from spirits. Those people are not connected spiritually. It's like when you hear about these terrorists, they talk about their spiritual advisor. No, that person's not spiritual, that person's religious. Right. There's a big difference, all right? Because those messages are coming from the human ego, edging God out, ego. And what's happening here is you have an egoistic person with a specific political or social agenda that needs moral justification for their acts of anger, bigotry, hatred, and violence. Those are not messages from God. Those are not messages from spirits. So when it comes to trusting the message, you know that the message is true, just like it says in Deuteronomy. You know that the message is true when it's about peace, love, healing, and resolution. That's the difference. So when you get that contact from a loved one and all of a sudden you feel the love, or you're a parent and you have a premonition that, oh my God, my child should not do this, because he or she could put themselves in harm's way. Or you get that glimpse, that knowing, that information of love, healing, peace, and resolution, of forgiveness, and helping you cope with regrets and survivor guilt. Those are messages from the divine. Those are messages from the afterlife frequency.
Wow. Well, we are now down to our last few minutes. The last thing, I don't know if it was your book or if it was in the Four Agreements, another book, because I read several books simultaneously. And in one of the books, it was talking about heaven and hell. I'm not sure if that was you or not.
I do cover hell in the book.
Wasn't it where, in terms of, we can actually have hell right here while we're alive?
Here, hell is here on earth.
It was here. It was here. Okay, because I thought it was here. I want to get about, here it is. Hell is a lesson as opposed to a punishment. That you're talking about here, that, inside of us, we can have hell going on inside of us. Whether it's, from mental illness, whether it's from, constantly whatever's going on, like we can look like we're fine, but actually be in hell here.
Absolutely. Post-traumatic stress disorder, survivor's guilt, bereavement, particularly a parent who's lost a child. I mean, how many times is somebody that you love dying and you feel, if only I could have done more? Or a parent who feels guilt for the death of a child, but they had nothing to do with the actual cause of death of the child. Yet being a parent, you still feel this intense sense of responsibility. And that's one of the healing aspects of the afterlife frequency. And if people want to find out about booking a session with me, I invite everyone to sign up for my newsletter, to find out about how to purchase my book, through Amazon and at all fine bookstores, please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. And I'm on radio every Thursday. And tonight, actually, Mark, I have a spirit communication online event that's being sponsored by brightlive.com. And there are still tickets available. And I can do this online because spirits move at the speed of light. I've done several of these. Yes, so please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. And that event starts tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I understand there's still some space available. Mark, I cannot thank you enough for the honor of being on the Reading Circle. I've gotten to know you personally over the last couple of years. You're a great guy. And, everybody, I'm Mark Anthony, and I recommend that you listen to the Reading Circle with Professor Marc Medley.
I know, that's right. Thank you so much. And the same back at you in terms of, and again, listening audience, see, I'm sitting here because I didn't ask Mark to do a reading. I didn't want to go there with him because he does do on-air readings as he goes about with various and he's appeared. I mean, I had his week-long calendar this week. They sent it out, the promos of every place he was going to be this week, and so he does do readings on air sometime when the host asks. And I said I was not going to ask him that, but you heard him when I started talking about my grandmother's brother, and he was spot on with the story about the smoking. And I'm going to check with the purple. Matter of fact, my guess is you're probably spot on about that as well. But I'll check with my mom and my aunt just to be sure. But my guess is they're probably going to say, yeah, mother did love purple. But again, he did that little reading there. So I'm sharing all that to say, folks, it's real. This is not hooey. This is not, I mean, it's for those that have that gift, and what Mark said earlier was we all have it. It's just some of us not as sensitive to it as others. This last thing that we were talking about, this whole hell thing, and then I'm going to give you another chance to promote, Mark, to do exactly what you did. Because I want the listening audience to make sure they can contact you. This says, creating negative karma perpetuates an ongoing cycle of negativity, which can land you right back into the reality of suffering here in the material world. Make no mistake, that can be hell. The way to escape the hell of negative karma is by not creating it in the first place. This is achieved by manifesting positive intentions which lead to positive actions. This goes back to what he was saying a couple of minutes ago about while we're here, and I kind of admonish us every Saturday when I end the show, let us show as much kindness, peace, and love and everything as we can while we are here. Because this whole thing of what comes around goes around. The negativity that you put out creates more negativity. The positivity that you put out creates more positivity. So with that being said, the book is The Afterlife Frequency. Now, let me tell you this, listening audience, most of you know, I don't get the chance to read the book from cover to cover prior to the interview. I usually read them after. But in Mark's case, I actually had read The Afterlife Frequency from cover to cover before the interview. I was reading it, from the time I got the copy, from my copy, I started reading it at that point, and it is a fascinating read. That's another reason I was looking forward to the interview this morning, because I've actually read the book, and it is a very good book. The title is The Afterlife Frequency, The Scientific Proof of Spiritual Contact and How That Awareness Will Change Your Life. Mark, I'm going to shut the mic off. You're going to get a chance to promote again your websites, contacts. Tell Rocky I said hello. Got a chance to meet and love her as well as we've talked on the telephone. But you have the opportunity again to promote website. You can say anything except a dollar amount, but other than that. So tonight I have a spirit communication event, the Hallows Eve Spirit Communication, through brightlive.com, or you can visit brightlive.com, or go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com, and you'll see it there in the calendar of events. Just click on that. Please, when you go to afterlifefrequency.com, sign up for my newsletter, and you can also find out about ordering my book and booking a session with me, and find out when you're on my newsletter that'll keep you up to date on all the events that I've got coming up. And all that is found at afterlifefrequency.com. And Mark, once again, thank you so very much for having me on the reading circle. I wish we had another hour. I love talking to you. We could just keep talking. And, we sure could.
Exploring many venues.
He's absolutely right, because a couple weeks ago when I were on their show, I was on from their show, The Psychic and the Doc. It comes on each week Eastern Time at 7 o'clock p.m., but it's actually hosted out of the West Coast in Seattle, Washington, 4 o'clock their time. So when they interviewed me, when Dr. Pat and Mark interviewed me, it was 7 o'clock our time here on the East Coast. And I had not realized, Mark, that an hour had gone by when you all said we were at the end. I thought it was only like 40 minutes. I said, they must have another segment coming on. When I looked at the clock, an entire hour had gone by. So to Mark's point, it goes quickly and we can talk. And the subject is really worthy of folks' understanding.
Thank you. We loved having you on the show, because your approach to education, this is what needs to be happening. Kids ought to be looking at school as this is fun and I'm learning and I'm growing, not as this is a negative thing, because the one thing that equalizes everybody, the one thing nobody can ever take away from you, is education.
That is correct. And again, I thank you and Dr. Pat so much. You are going to receive, I'll send to you or Rocky or whomever, the links. You'll get an MP3 link as well as whenever I put it up on YouTube, and you all can do whatever you'd like with it.
We will share it on social media. Thank you so very much, Mark.
Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Wow. I'm going to say again, he was spot on with Uncle Laddie. And I had not told him a thing. Wow. All right. That's another episode of The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. We talked about the book this morning, The Afterlife Frequency, the scientific proof of spiritual contact and how that awareness will change your life. Get a copy of the book. It's available on all your book sites. If you go to his website, you can order it. If you go to Amazon, you can order it. Wherever you want to go to your local retailer, they can order it for you.